games going on in there at the moment. So the round hasn't finished, but I've finished my 8 games. And basically, as you would have seen, I've been doing these sort of live stream updates after every couple of rounds. So I thought now I'd do a quick one before the awards and shit, and I'll update you on my last 2 games. So before I do go into those games, I just want to quickly mention the pod system. So they're doing a pod system. There's a 250 odd player event, biggest event Australia has ever had, which is exciting. But they're doing a pod system where basically in this last day they broke everybody down into pods of 4, so the whole way down. So basically no matter what results you got today, you couldn't go up or down by more than 4 placings, right? So I was in a pod where I was basically locked in between 20th place and 17th place, so then nothing I could do would get me higher than 17th place. There's a number of reasons why they do this. I personally don't like it, because it means that if I won both my games today, I would have gone 7 wins and a loss and still only came 16th or 17th, when somebody who came 15th could have won 5 games and lost 3. So because we both went in today with 5 wins and a loss, so we would have been in similar pods, but they might have been in the pod above me, and I can't get past them even if I win both my games. So I think it's a trash system. I get why they do it for the top. They want to do the pod at the top, so that if you've won all 6 games on the first 2 days, you can't then lose 2 games and get overtaken by somebody who lost a game on the first day. So it's trying to stop people from like leapfrogging, I guess, and submarining, because you get locked into that spot. But I think there's better ways to do it. Maybe you just pod the top instead of podding the whole thing. Anyway, that's not what this video is about. I just wanted to sort of bring that to your attention so that you have a bit of an understanding, because basically first round I got paired into a mate of mine, Brian Lakeland, and because we were sort of locked in, and it didn't really matter the results, right? Because if I win or lose, either way, I'm coming somewhere between 20th and 17th, so I didn't really care. So we both decided that we were going to test out some stuff, take some suboptimal decisions potentially, and see what happens. So I took engage on all fronts. He was running custodians, so he didn't give up any good secondaries. Normally I would take something like behind enemy lines, but I was like, I'll take engage on all fronts. That's something I never take. So I was like, I'll give that a go. And that turned out to cost me the game, because I got almost no points for it. Because I didn't realize that characters don't count. So I had this big game plan basically to move my Terminator brick up into the center of the table, and then basically sit there, bring Hellbrutes, Heckbrutes, and Decimators on into those quarters, get my engage on all fronts there, and then as he blows them all up in the later turns, I was going to Voltron out with those characters and get in each quarter with those, and just score 3 points, 3 points, 3 points. That was my plan. But it turns out characters don't count towards it, so fucking I just got no points. So that was interesting. Basically what happened there, so it was I was running my Terminator brick with the crazy builds. He was running custodians with a bunch of units of 3 infantry dudes. And what else did he have? He had a bunch of units of the Sisters of Silence, and a couple of characters, and then a bunch of units of Aloris, like little one-man units of those Terminator guys. And basically what he did is, who got first turn? I got first turn, teleported up into the middle, did my warp ritual, which he denied on a 4-up. And this was also an experiment, I wanted to experiment, well hang on, even if somebody has a 4-up, is warp ritual still potentially worth it? And so he denied it on the first one, but I had all my Terminators hugging cover, all my characters behind, and then in his turn he brought all of his army to bear, brought all of his guns out, fired everything at me, failed to do a single wound to the Terminators. So he was just like, fuck, that's game over. And then the Terminators went in and just absolutely munched a whole bunch of stuff and killed a whole ton of these custodians, and I was like, yeah, I'm looking good, it's looking good. And I practically tabled him by the end of the game, and I still had the Terminator unit didn't lose a single model, Abaddon didn't take a single wound, I still had 2 Decimators and a Hellbrute left, he was just fucking destroyed on the tabletop. But unfortunately, because of the secondaries that I picked, And the fact that he was able to deny my warp ritual, the fact that I got no engage on all fronts, it meant I just got no points, and he ended up winning it by, I think, roughly 5 to 10 points, if off memory. Just because he picked good secondaries. We both picked grind them down, which was an interesting one. I love it when both players pick that because it's such a flex. When you tell your opponent that you're taking grind them down, you're telling them I'm going to kill the fuck out of you more than you're going to kill the fuck out of me, which is always funny. And basically I think we more or less tied for that. I think he got it 2 turns and I got it 2 turns, and then there was 1 turn where neither of us got it because we killed the exact same number of units. So that was interesting. But yeah, really cool game. Brian's a sick dude. There wasn't any particularly clutch plays there, I don't think. So, yeah, nothing particular, nothing to write home about, you know, like it was all pretty straightforward stuff. The Terminators teleport up, they blow a bunch of shit up. Abaddon goes in, turn 2, he advances and charges and goes and blows a bunch of shit up. You know, the Hellbrutes, they come on, Heckbrutes. Oh, there was actually one bit. He brought on his shield captain and some other stuff down on one of my side objectives, and he shot at the Heckbrute, didn't kill it, and then I shot back and nearly killed his shield captain. So I did like 7 wounds to this 9 wound character with the melter gun, and he was fucking blown away. He was like, oh no, because now a few stray bolters could potentially take out that shield captain, which they ended up doing. And it was all thanks to the Hellbrutes. So the Hellbrutes are fucking sick. I really think we're entering, and I call them Heckbrutes because they do your opponent a heckin' concern, and they're heckin' powerful. So yeah, Heckbrutes are sick. The Decimators were doing well, but he was the whatever you call it, shield host that gets a 4-up save against mortal wounds, and as a result, I was just like, the Decimators weren't doing amazing damage, but they were still chunking away at those custodians. Like, it's one of those things where, yes, he gets a really good save against me, but he gets a really good save against everything else as well. So the mortal wounds are still very relevant. You know, even though he's pretty good at denying those mortal wounds, it's still worthwhile involving them in the list. So yeah, he did really well. He beat me, so that put me on 5 wins, 2 losses. And then we went into the last game, and it was another Custodians player, and I was like, fuck. You know, I've just realized that the Custodians players have really good play into me in terms of secondaries, in terms of denials, etc. But this game was an absolute blowout in the other direction. I absolutely destroyed this guy. So he had a bunch of the big grav tanks with the big guns, and one of the little grav tanks, and then he had a bunch of dreadnoughts. So it's a very different Custodians list. And basically he got the first turn, and I was like, oh, this is bad. He's going to be able to move up into the center to prevent me from deep striking there with my Veil Breaker, which means I'm not going to be able to get my Warp Ritual, and he's also going to screen me out and all this, but he basically didn't. Everything moved up towards the center, but not onto the center, and he had a big cluster of dreadnoughts there, and I was like, okay, this is alright, I don't mind this, I can go in and blow that all up. And then we go into my turn, and I fail Illusory Supplication. And I'm like, fuck, I should have spent the 2 CP to just auto pass it and send them in. But I was like, it's a 1 in 6, should be right. Roll a 1. So I'm like, now I've got no Illusory Supplication, which means all those Custodians go from hitting on 4s with no rerolls to hitting on 2s with rerolls. The fucking swing on that is like 6 times as powerful. Like, they get so much more powerful into me. So I was like, fuck. If I send the Terminators out now, and I had all my Heckbrutes and all my Decimators in strat reserves, because he had a lot of big guns. So I was like, if I send them out now, they're just going to die. And I was like, and then if I lose all my Terminators, I'm fucked. But I was like, you know what, fuck it. A short game's a quick game, and the results of these games don't really matter thanks to the pod system. So I was like, I don't really care if I lose. So I'm just going to see what happens. And I yeeted out the Terminators. And then they went in and killed like 3 dreadnoughts and a unit of custodian guard, and that was huge. And then we went into his turn, and he killed like 7 Terminators, 6 or 7 Terminators. And I was like, actually, that's not that bad. You know, that's really not that bad. A lot of his shots were 2 damage, so it really wasn't that bad. And I still had the two command points because I generated one at the start of his turn. So when he fell back with one of the dreadnoughts that I didn't kill on their first turn, I was able to use the Slanesh strat to shoot them, and I shot 4 melter guns into it, or blew that dreadnought up in his turn. So, and then we go into my turn, and now there's still 4 Terminators left. I was able to resurrect him, and then I basically killed. He was practically tabled by turn 2, killed everything. He made a very critical error where he brought all of his grav tanks on, and he basically moved them towards my table edge, not realizing or forgetting that with strat reserves, as long as you're wholly within your own deployment zone and wholly within 1 inch of your battlefield edge, you can come on regardless of that 9-inch limitation. So I basically brought both Hellbrutes on so that they were looking at like 2 to 3 inch charges into one of his tanks. So they came on, they shot downrange and blew up a tank, and then they charged the other tank and blew it up. So those 2 Hellbrutes just came on, and both of them traded up for these Custodians grav tanks. And then another Hellbrute went on, the Heckbrute went on the other side of the table, blew up one of the, just a Loris Terminator guy, charged into the other one, killed that. It was just an absolute bloodbath. So yeah, he misplayed that, and he underestimated the Terminator's damage. To be fair, so did I. I thought that I was going to send the Terminators in, kill like 2 dreadnoughts, maybe 3, but then I was like, I'm just going to die. I'm just going to get wiped. But it wasn't the case. I was able to more or less, hold my ground. He failed to kill any of my characters, which then meant in my turn I was able to go, cool, I'm going to move my OBSEC guy over there, and now those Terminators are taking that objective from you, and it just became an absolute bloodbath. He was a great guy, but yeah, unfortunately, did not go his way. So that more or less sums up my 2 games from today, and that sums up the event. So I ended up going 6 wins and 2 losses. The 2 losses were both to very strong players. So I lost 1 game to Adam Camilleri, who's literally a household name. You've probably heard of him, and he's a World Team Championships player. He's played on the Australian team before. He's played on other teams as a merc before. He's a household name. He's a really, really renowned, talented player. And the other game was against my mate Brian Lakeland after the pod system. So that loss, I mean, it's still a loss, but that doesn't really matter because we were locked in at that point anyway. So that sums up the event. I think the round will probably be finishing soon. So I'll just do a quick jump into the chat and see what you guys have been saying, and see if there's been any questions, and then I'll finish the video there. So we've got a couple questions here. How do we feel about Chaos in Arcs of Omen? So Chaos Space Marines, I assume you mean. I think they're strong. Chaos Space Marines have still got teeth. Like I was able to prove that today. I think the Arcs of Omen meta is going to take a little bit of time to develop. One of the big ones, I think, is being able to put things in strat reserves for free. Armies that can capitalize on that, they're going to be very, very powerful, because things die so easily now with the the amount of damage that armies like Marines and Guard, Custodians, AdMech, these guys, they're really, really powerful armies. So the critical thing to do here is going to be, for Chaos players particularly, is to put as much of your stuff in strat reserves as you can, pretty much every game, and then put just the rest on the table hidden, so that your opponent just can't do that explosive damage to you in their first turn. And if they can't do explosive damage to you in their first turn, well then you're relatively safe, and you're able to then bring your units on 1 by 1 where they need to be. So yeah, that's really good. And I think a mix, when you're doing this, you need a mix of different types of arrival. So for example, you've got your strat reserves that can walk on 6 inches, but you also need some traditional deep strikers that can come on anywhere, because there's pros and cons to both. The pros of the traditional deep strike is that you can come on anywhere, right? You can come on in the center of the table, right? You can come on behind in your opponent's deployment zone. So that's really, really powerful. And for that, I think obliterators are fucking clutch. They're really, really good because they're a small base. They're very hard to screen out. They bring relevant firepower when they do arrive, and relevant combat. So they're really good for that role, as are Raptors. Raptors also fill a very small hole. They're very easy to fit because it's a unit of 5 Raptors. They're also pretty cheap. So yeah, those 2 elements are quite important. And then whereas the advantage to the ones that walk on from a table edge is that if your opponent happens to go near your battlefield edge, you can come on within 4 or 5 inches, depending on how close they are. So I think for that, you want things like legionaries with all the upgraded weapons, and they can just go, cool, we're just going to come on, we're going to charge whatever it is there, we're going to string out with that charge move and get onto those objectives, that sort of stuff. So I think I'm going to start working on some lists, which I'll obviously share with you guys here, and that'll be several units of legionaries, several units of obliterators, several units of raptors, and then several units of like noise marines or some kind of ranged damage dealer, so you can play all of those bits and pieces. Next question. G'day Dean, with the custodians armies you saw, were they using Forge World units? Yes. It says I'm there. I'm not sure if that was a... it's a two-part comment. Okay. I'm playing a group. We don't allow Forge World units, and I'm struggling to get wins with custodians. So, yes and no. There was the one with the dreadnoughts. He had obviously the Forge World dreadnoughts. But the other two, I don't think they did have any Forge World. So the guy who's probably winning the event right now is a Custodians player. So make sure you jump into BCP and check out his list. His name's Liam Hackett. His list is really fucking cool. He basically has 2 big 10-man blobs of the Alaris Custodians, or the Wardens or whatever, I can't remember. The two big bricks, the 50-point dudes. And then he has that teleport chick that moves, that basically pre-game moves the Rhino, disembarks out her like 11 inches or whatever, and then teleports that brick up to her. And then that's a really good way of getting a strong foothold on the center of the table early in the event, or early in the game. It's a really scary Custodians list. So if you are interested in Custodians, that's something definitely worth looking into. And the other bloke just had sort of MSU bits and pieces. We got a picture, has asked, will I provide my list? You can see it in BCP. I don't know how to provide it here. I will just give you a quick TLDR. It's a Master of Possessions, a Dark Apostle, Abaddon the Despoiler, a Sorcerer in Terminator armor. He has the Veilbreaker plate, and then you've got 10 Terminators with a mix of Melters and Chain Fists and stuff, and 2 units of 10 Cultists, 3 Hellbrutes, 5 Raptors, and 2 Decimators. So it's a pretty simple list, similar to the one that I ran at Men's Masquerade, which I did a series of videos on, and similar to the ones that I've done in my other Black Legion battle reports and stuff. So that's my sort of Black Legion meta call. Congrats from Eduardo, thank you very much. Any notable surprising tactics moves in this event for you? So there was a few tactics that I did that surprised me. I was like, oh, that was actually sick. So one of them was Tide of Traders. I used Tide of Traders for the first time ever, and it literally won me a game, where basically my opponent had killed a unit of cultists down to only 1 left. I pulled to the point where he wouldn't be able to draw line of sight on that last one, so he couldn't kill it. And then basically, it was 2 guys left, and then one of them died to morale, and then the other one lived. And then as a result, I was within 6 inches of the table edge. So in my command phase, Tide of Traders, bring back D3+3, brought back 6 guys, and then was able to string out onto 2 objectives with those now set unit of 7 guys. And that was a massive swing, because it denied his primary, because now I had cultists over there that if they had died, I would have had nothing in that area of the table. And it also got me 4 points primary, so that was probably like a 8 to 12 point swing in the game, which was really, really cool. So Tide of Traders is definitely one to just keep in the old noggin. It's something that you can do, and when you are moving your cultists around, make sure you're moving them in such a way that they can't see the whole unit, because that way, if they don't kill the whole unit, you'll have a couple guys left. And then just remember that if you are nearby an objective that you want to be on, you can resurrect models to get onto it. So that was one. And the other one was the Heck Brutes with the Shoot on Death. That was this is the first event that I've ran the Heck Brutes at, and holy shit, they were amazing. They were so goddamn amazing. The amount of things, like there was one guy who had armigers, Imperial Knights player. He threw 2 armigers towards me. In like the Hellbrute came on the side, he sends over his 2 armigers, he shoots at one, fails to kill it, and then it shoots on it in his shooting phase, and shoots the other one, because it's it has to shoot either the unit that shot at it or the closest enemy unit, and the other one was closer. So he's shot at me with the one further back, and then I've gone, cool, I'm going to shoot at the one closer, and I blew it up. And then that meant that one couldn't shoot me, which means my Hellbrute's still alive. Then we go into my turn, and that Hellbrute now goes and kills the other Armiger. So that one Hellbrute traded up for 2. It's like he literally 3x'd his points. So Heckbrutes are heckin' crazy. Is the Termi brick dead? That's a hard question to answer. I think it might be. Unfortunately. So it depends on what you're trying to do. So if your goal is to go to an event, say it's a 5-round event, like a traditional event, if you just want to go like 3 wins, 2 losses, or maybe 4 wins and a loss, then the Terminator unit will get you there. It's still very strong into a lot of armies. Like Knights can't deal with it, A lot of Marines struggle to deal with it. There's a lot of armies that really just struggle to kill those Terminators, right? Like the Custodians player, Brian Lakeland, he literally shot his entire army at it, and he didn't even do a single wound. No wounds dealt. So it's fucking tough as fuck. However, there are some armies that can deal with it. Like Adam Camilleri was able to destroy the whole unit in one phase, because he basically just goes overcharging plasma with Weapons of the Dark Ages for 3 damage, and he just goes whoosh, and fucking, ignoring cover, so pushing me to my 5-up saves. And then the problem is if you fail Illusory Supplication, that unit's fucked. If you fail Delightful Agonies, that unit's fucked. So it really does hinge on a lot of things. That has a lot of what I call fail points, right? Like if you fail Illusory, you're dead. If you fail, Delightful Agonies, you're dead, right? And when you've got lots of fail points, you're kind of tempting fate. And you're putting a lot of the agency on the dice and taking the agency away from yourself, which is obviously not ideal. So it's not dead, but it's a risk, it's a hazard. I think it's way more important and way more relevant in team events, because you can sort of control who you verse in team events to a degree. So you can just go, oh cool, that person has no ability to deny psychic powers. So let's put our Terminator list into that, and now they can't deny our Warp Ritual, they can't deny our Illusory, our fucking Delightful Agonies, that sort of stuff. And then you're like, okay, cool, now that list is fucking powerful. Whereas if you go up into like a Sisters of Battle army, or an Eldar army, or a fucking whatever, even the Custodians armies with the Sisters and Silence, like, if they have the ability to not only reduce your Warp Charge casts, but also the ability to 4-up deny you, like, you kind of just lose more often than not. So I don't think the Chaos Terminator brick is dead, but I don't think it's viable in singles if your goal is to win the event. If your goal is to just go, cool, I want something that's so powerful in some matchups that those ones become very easy wins, and then I want to just have, I'm happy to lose 2 games as long as I win 3. Well, the Chaos Terminator brick will probably just win 3 games just by the virtue of the fact that your opponent can't hurt it. So I guess that's sort of my answer. I hope that makes sense. And then the last question there is what loadout on the Hellbrutes. So there's a lot of different options here. Like, you can give them marks because they're core. You can give them las cannons, or you can give them missile launchers, or you can do all sorts of shit with them. My personal preference is just keep them cheap, keep them dirt cheap, and that way they come on, they've got their Power Fist, they've got their Heavy Flamer, and they got their Multi-Melter, just the standard loadout, and they just do good work, because they're coming on from strat reserves. Like, I strat reserved them in every single game. Not once did I deploy a Hellbrute. They always came on from strat reserve, and it was fucking sick. They were so good. An argument could be made for las cannons. It's an extra 10 points, which sort of sucks, because the part of the charm of the Hellbrute is that they're dirt cheap. So every extra point you're spending on them is a problem. But there were some games where the 24-inch range plus the 6-inch move on from the table edge wasn't enough to get to where I wanted them to be for damage dealing, whereas the las cannons would have got there. And the las cannons also being strength 9 means if you're in a T8 meta, that's a bit more relevant. But the D6 +2 damage on the melter guns was very, very good. So, being able to just go, cool, I'm within 12 inches of you because I've just come on from your table, like the table edge right near you. And just being like, cool, 2 shots, D6, hitting on 2s because you're coming up from the table edge. I actually think Black Legion, even without the Terminators, even if you pivot into more of an MSU sort of list, I still think Black Legion's possibly the best. What about the new Predator? 130 points with 2 las cannon shots, D6 +2 damage, and 6 heavy bolter shots. So things like that are really interesting because you can still outflank that, right? So 130 points and you're getting, strong las cannons, long range, heavy bolters. It's T8, whereas the Hellbrut's fucking T7. That's interesting. Actually, so instead of an upgraded Hellbrut, if you were to spend points, you probably would upgrade to a Predator. Because then you've just got this tough as fuck thing and it can come on from a table edge still. I guess the downside is that it doesn't have combat. The Hellbrut combat was actually very relevant. So I guess you'd probably take a mix, to be honest, and then just, the Hellbruts come on where they're likely to make charges, and then the Predators come on where they're not likely to make charges. So shuffling things around and figuring out what to strat reserve and when is going to be very relevant. Like the Predators, for example, you may not need to strat reserve them. There may be somewhere in your deployment where you can just hide a couple of Predators. Yeah, it's definitely relevant. I'll definitely look into that one a little bit further. I'm planning a video with talking about some of the big changes in Arks of Omen, because I think people, they just sort of looked at the points cost, and I'm guilty of this as well. They just sort of looked at the points cost and went, okay, well, how has things changed? Not much massively. Cool, I guess we, X, Y, Z. But things like the strat reserves is actually really important. It actually changes almost every unit needs to be reviewed through that lens of going, hang on, this can now effectively deep strike for free. If you put that rule on every unit, well, would you look at certain units differently? Would you look at the Predator and be like, actually, come to think of it, that Predator can now deep strike for free. Maybe I do bring Predators, So, I guess it also depends on what Legion, right? Like, so for example, the Black Legion don't care much for Predators because they want to be shooting the closest thing. So yeah, interesting. Thoughts on the updated Black Legion secondary? It seems really good now. I didn't take it once. I don't rate it. I think it's still bad because if you do it on your home objective, it's only worth 1 point. All the ones in the middle, it's only worth 3 points. So to get 15, you need a 6 objective mission, and you still kind of need to do it on your opponent's home field, which is fucking hard to do an action on their home field. I don't know. I don't rate it. It's only really if you're expecting your opponent to take banners or something like that, where they're going to be trying to do actions objectives, then maybe it's cool, maybe it's good. But I just think the score is too low. I would rather take banners anytime. Yeah, so that's my thoughts on that one. But yeah, so I think they're more or less wrapped up in there. I've just got music playing and some sirens going off. So I'm going to wrap up this video here. Thanks for tuning in, guys. And I'll be looking to do a full detailed summary of all of my games in a video this coming week. So yeah, thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.